predictably, in the comment section of the most recent video I did about Moses Itauma, there were several people downplaying Itauma's chances, and they are clearly desperate for Itauma to fail in his attempt to become the youngest heavyweight champion in history, breaking Mike Tyson's record. That's very clear to me. They can deny it all they want, but the fact that they're coming out with such hyperbolic and illogical statements shows me that they're in a state of desperation, and these guys are really just casuals. One or two of them claim to be hardcore boxing fans like me. No, you're not like me. If you were a hardcore boxing fan like me, you would know some of the things I'm going to school you about in this video, but you clearly didn't know these things, or else you wouldn't have made the statements you made. Now, that sounds cryptic. You'll understand what I mean in just a moment. So first of all, there was a guy in the comments who said that many of Moses Itauma's wins in the amateurs were against debutantes, people having their first ever amateur bout. And he's using BoxRec to determine this. I explained to him in the comments what should be obvious, but it's not to a lot of casuals. And that is that, first of all, BoxRec doesn't show full amateur records a lot of the time. Secondly, when it says debut here, it's not denoting that the person is having their first ever amateur bout. How do I know this? Well, because look, here, this guy, Michel Dobler, it says debut, and this is in the European Junior Championships quarterfinal. What, you think that a guy who's never had even one amateur bout before in his life can just step in to the European Championship quarterfinals? Yeah, that doesn't happen, bruv. Only a casual would think that that happens. It doesn't happen. What debut actually means on these amateur records on BoxRec is either this is the first time this fighter has appeared in this tournament, so be it their first Olympics or their first European Championships, or it's the first fight that BoxRec have been able to obtain any information on. It certainly doesn't mean that it's his first ever amateur fight. That's ridiculous. As I say, you don't just walk in to a quarterfinal of a major European tournament when it's your first ever amateur bout. Doesn't happen. Another example of that here on Mike Tyson's amateur record. So in Mike Tyson's penultimate amateur fight, right before he turned pro, he fought in a tournament in Finland, the Itauma tournament. He got to the final there and won on points over 3 rounds. But here in the fight prior to the final, it says he fought a guy on his debut. Do you seriously think that this guy, Sizkora, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, do you seriously think that was his first ever amateur bout? Throwing a guy who's never fought in an amateur fight before in a major tournament against Mike Tyson. Does that sound realistic to you? Obviously not. Okay, this was not the guy's debut. This was not his first ever amateur bout. It was either the first time he'd competed in this tournament, he'd never been in this tournament before, or it's just the first fight that BoxRec have been able to get hold of any information on with regards to this guy's amateur career. As I say, BoxRec amateur records are very often incomplete. There are many fighters who you can look at on BoxRec who, it's well known, had extensive amateur backgrounds, but you can only find record of maybe 2 or 3 of their fights on BoxRec. That's common. With BoxRec, they really specialize in professional boxing records. They have close ties with many of the commissions around the world. You know, like the British Boxing Board of Control, the various commissions in the United States, be it the Nevada State Athletic Commission, the New York State Athletic Commission, etc., etc. But when it comes to amateur boxing, they're not as able to get hold of information, statistics, who fought, when was their first fight, because a lot of the time, fighters are having their first amateur bouts when they're just kids. In the UK, you have the amateur card system, where they mark down the number of bouts you have on there and what have you. Different countries have got their own systems. So just get that straight. I know the guy was trying to discredit Moses Itauma. That was the point he was trying to push, really. He was trying to discredit his amateur record. Oh, he fought a bunch of debutantes. No, they're not debutantes, mate. It's not, you don't jump straight in Look at this here. Right? Other examples. You've got this guy, it says, again, Dobler, and this is in a major tournament, right? Quarterfinal. Here, semi-final. His not his penultimate amateur bout. There's quite a few more after that. Didn't scroll up. But just another example. He's in the semi-final here, right? Quarterfinal against Dobler, semi-final. Another semi-final here. It says debut for this guy. Obviously, that's not his first amateur bout, bro. Kryl Borisov. It says debut, but it's the final. So what, he didn't fight at all? This was his first ever amateur bout? Take yourself down to an amateur gym and actually box. Learn something about the way boxing works. Before you comment on my videos, please. Look, you don't have to be someone that's boxed to have a sensible perspective on boxing. But for those of you who don't have a sensible perspective on boxing, you really need to take yourself down to an amateur gym and box yourself and immerse yourself in the boxing culture. Have those experiences, because then you'll be in a much better position to come to channels like mine and leave comments that don't make you look like a casual. All right? Now, there was another individual who left a comment saying it's not going to happen, Hatman. He's not going to break Mike Tyson's record as the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Well, a very dismissive thing to say. I'm certainly not guaranteeing that Moses Itauma can break Mike Tyson's record because, first of all, there's a load of questions that he needs to answer in the ring. We need to see whether he's got the stamina, the chin, the heart, whether he can do the 12 rounds. There are so many questions that he has to answer before he can challenge for a world title. And also, there is boxing politics which can get in the way of him trying to do something like this. So I'm not sitting here telling you that he's going to achieve the goal, but where the guy reveals his true feelings is when he says that David Tua, at the same age as Moses Itauma, would make light work of Itauma. If they both fought when they were the same age, 17, 18 years of age, this guy's saying that David Tua would make light work of him. I know that that's not a reasonable assumption or a reasonable opinion to have. Why do I say this? Well, because when David Tua, first of all, was an amateur, he was very small, even for the 200-pound division that he competed in. In amateur boxing, you've got heavyweight and then you've got super heavyweight. The weight limit for heavyweight is 200 pounds. So it's the equivalent of cruiserweight in the pros. That's the division that David Tua fought in the amateurs, heavyweight. And David Tua was so small, not just in terms of height, he's only about 5'8", 5'9" by the time he's 17, 18. Not just small in terms of height, but small in terms of weight. David Tua used to put weights in his shorts, under his shorts, to bulk himself up closer to the 200-pound limit when he was an amateur. And maybe if you look it up on the internet, you might be able to find reference to that interview with David Tua where he was talking about how small he was in the amateurs, having to put weights under his shorts to bulk himself up to the 200-pound limit. So we're talking about a small guy in David Tua when he's 17, 18, Moses Atuma's age. Small guy. And in terms of how he fared, well, David Tua fought in the World Championships against Felix Savon. Now, of course, Felix Savon, one of the greatest amateurs of all time from Cuba. But David Tua didn't last 30 seconds against Felix Savon. This is when they fought here in the World Championships. David Tua got knocked out in less than 30 seconds. And it wasn't any premature stoppage. No, he got knocked out badly. He was gone. The first right hand Felix Savon hit him with, David Tua was out. And that's when he was the same age as Moses Itauma. I think it was a year later, he fought in the Olympics. And he made it to the semifinals, where he fought a guy called David Izonrite. Now, just to show you that I'm not doing this retrospectively and, faking it, whereby, oh, maybe he doesn't really know who David Izonrite is and he's gone and looked at BoxRec. No. I know these fighters. Case in point, in the recent video I did about Anthony Joshua potentially fighting Dempsey McKean, there was a name that I recognized on McKean's record. Go look it up. Uploaded the video the other day. Nothing to do with Moses Itauma, right? Completely different subject. But I noticed the Azonrite name on Dempsey McKean's record. I clicked on it and I recognized this guy, Roger Azonrite, as the brother of David Azonrite. So I know David Azonrite, for I've known him since the 90s. David Azonrite fought David Tua in the 92 Olympics in Barcelona, dropped him, and outpointed him in the semifinals. That's what happened. This is Tua when he's the same age as Moses Itauma, getting dropped and outpointed by David Azonrite a year after getting knocked out in one round by Felix Savon. And so you're telling me that this, 190 pound, 195 pound David Tua is going to make light work of Moses Itauma at the same age? Yeah, this is not a reasonable thing to say. If you were to say that you think Tua might be able to beat Itauma at the same age, maybe out hustle him or whatever, I completely disagree, but it's not a completely ridiculous thing to say. But when you're coming out with stuff like he makes light work of Itauma, you reveal yourself to be the casual that you really are. Because a guy who's losing to David Azonrite, who's a small heavyweight himself, by the way, who's getting dropped and losing to David Azonrite, bear in mind, Moses Atuma's 6'5". He's like 240 pounds plus. He can move well. Even in the pros, David Tua always had an issue with movers. Now, knocked out by Savon in one round, dropped and beaten by Azonrite a year later in the Olympics. Azonrite then goes on to fight Savon in the final. He loses on points. So if you're thinking, well, maybe Savon was just so incredible that he's knocking everybody out in one round, nobody can do any better than David Tua. That's, of course, not true at all. Azonrite managed to go the distance with the same guy, the very same version of Felix Savon, who knocked out David Tua in under 30 seconds. Azonrite goes the distance. So again, this claim that Tua, at 18 years of age, makes light work of Itauma is laughable. It is laughable. Now, yes, David Tua got his revenge over Azonrite in the pros. And they call him Eyes On here because this is an abbreviation of Azonrite to make it easier for the commentators to pronounce. Yes, David Tua got his revenge over Azonrite in the pros, but even then, he was being outboxed the whole fight. Azonrite was up on all three judges' scorecards going into the 12th round against David Tua. Just to emphasize the point I'm making here with regards to Tua having trouble with anyone that had decent boxing skills. All right. So David Tua, behind on cards, credit to him, he manages to pull it out the bag in the final round when he's behind on points against David Azonrite. But 2 fights later, of course, he gets beaten by Ike Beabuchi, who was better than Azonrite. So, yeah, if you're just simply of the view that Itauma isn't going to break the record because of politics, hey, that's fair enough. But if you're saying that, he doesn't have anywhere near the ability necessary to have any chance of breaking Mike Tyson's record, and you're coming out with all this silly hyperbole about David Tua would make light work of him at the same age. I mean, this is just silly. The same guy also mentioned Mike Tyson. He said, David Tua would make light work of him at the same age. Never mind Tyson. Okay, let's have a look at Mike Tyson. And this is a thing that always makes me laugh about Tyson fanatics, is most of them are so ignorant about Mike Tyson's amateur career. So ignorant. They watch a few Mike Tyson highlight reels and they think they know the guy. You don't know the guy. So let me school you. Here we have Mike Tyson in the Olympic trials facing off against Henry Tillman. Henry Tillman, again, this is at heavyweight. This is not super heavyweight. So we're talking about 200-pound weight limit. Mike Tyson gets outboxed, beaten on points by Henry Tillman in the Olympic trials. That's why Mike Tyson never went to the 84 Olympics. That, to this day, is seen as the greatest Olympic team in American history, was the class of 84. Mike Tyson never made it because he got beaten by Henry Tillman in the Olympic trials on points, and he got beaten again by Henry Tillman in the Olympic box-offs. Okay, so this is the Mike Tyson who, presumably, according to these guys in the comments of my most recent Itauma video, he's just going to walk through Itauma in what, one round, and Atuma's got no chance and he gets blown out the water. So how is it that guys like Henry Tillman, because you're acting as if in order to stand any chance at all against Mike Tyson as an amateur, you have to be some kind of superhuman fighter. Well, are you saying Henry Tillman was a superhuman fighter? And yeah, Tillman did go on to medal at the Olympics and all that, but you go look at Henry Tillman's pro career. Was this some all-time great? No, he wasn't. I mean, Audley Harrison won a gold medal, folks. This is not some superhuman fight. This is another small heavyweight, relatively tall. Yes, I know he doesn't look tall here in this picture because he's bending his knees, but Henry Tillman was maybe about, I don't know, 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Mike Tyson's like 5'10". But this wasn't any amazing special fighter in Henry Tillman. And yet he managed to beat Mike Tyson twice in the amateurs. But somehow Moses Atuma's just going to get wiped out in 1 or 2 rounds, according to these fanboys. Come on. I'm not even sitting here telling you that Itauma would beat Mike Tyson when they were the same age. I'm not sitting here telling you that. I'm just saying that people are downplaying Ituma's ability because they don't want him to break Mike Tyson's record. That's what's going on. At the end of the day, I can't make any claims, oh yeah, Itauma would have destroyed Tyson at the same age. No. But would he have had a chance? A very good chance of beating Mike Tyson at the same age? Obviously, yes. Mike Tyson did a tremendous amount of developing between the age of 18, as he was here when he fought Henry Tillman, when he lost to Tillman twice, and the age of 20, 2 years later when he won the world heavyweight title. And this is something that if Moses Itauma is listening to this video, and shout out to Moses Itauma, by the way, because he did shout me out in an interview. I saw that. If he's listening to this video, I'm sure he don't need to take advice from me, and there's going to be people around him telling him this anyway. He needs to keep his eyes on the prize and become a gym rat. He needs to be 100% dedicated. Don't allow the praise from people like me who recognize his talent and his potential go to his head and make him think that it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be the youngest heavyweight champion in history. No, you have to literally dedicate your life. When Mike Tyson was 18, he was bitterly upset that he never made the Olympics. And he put all of that upset and all of that hurt and all of that anger into the gym, training to become the absolute monster that he eventually did become. He was living in the gym, Mike Tyson. When he was fighting so often, the guy was the quintessential gym rat. That's what it takes. That's the minimum that you're going to have to put in order to stand a realistic chance of breaking Mike Tyson's record. You're going to have to live in the gym day in, day out. Mike Tyson once claimed, I don't know whether it's true, but between the ages of like 18 and 20 when he won the title, he never even had a girlfriend. That's how dedicated he was to achieving this goal. So yeah, if Atuma's listening, next level. All the stuff that he's done in the amateurs is all well and good, but in the pros, you got to get used to the longer rounds. I know he's sparred, I'm sure, long rounds, but you got to absolutely be a machine in the gym and hyper focus on achieving this goal. So that's what I'll end on. But as far as the Mike Tyson casuals, yes, of course, you're going to be there saying, I told you so, if Moses Itauma doesn't make it. But of course, you want that scenario to unfold. That's the point I'm making here. You want Itauma to fail. That's how bad mind you people are, because you love Mike Tyson so much. That's what it's about with you. Whereas with me, no, I want to see records broken. But I'm realistic, of course. I'm not sitting here telling you that Itauma is going to do it, but he certainly has potential. He's certainly a prodigious talent. Anyone who can't see that, again, you must be a casual. And to finish off, there was obviously the majority of people recognizing the talent that Moses Itauma has, the potential he has, and it is just potential. There are plenty of fighters who came along with potential and they didn't fulfill it. There's no telling whether Itauma is going to be the same. And of course, there are some people saying, oh, well, Itauma should have stayed amateur longer and, it's premature for him to turn pro. Nothing worth achieving comes without risk. You got to roll the dice, right? There's no reward without risk. Moses Itauma wants to try and achieve something which may last for decades, and that is becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Of course, there's no guarantee he's going to do it. He might fail. He might fail badly for all we know. But I salute the young man for trying, because he has an opportunity. He's reached a level early enough in life whereby it's doable. And by the way, talking about how advanced Itauma is in his boxing technique and so on, in one of the interviews I watched of his over the past week, he talked about boxing when he was 9 years old. So people talking about, oh, he needs to stay amateur for longer. The guy's been boxing since he was at least 9. Right? So he's been boxing for 9 years. At least 9 years. This isn't some Johnny come lately who just picked up a pair of gloves a couple years back. No, the guy's been boxing for at least 9 years. Have you been boxing for that long? Well, you can turn pro at 18. It's a lot more realistic. I mean, he's been boxing longer than Mike Tyson had been boxing when Tyson turned pro at 18. So, that's something that people should consider. And as I say, to finish off, there was somebody in the comments who was comparing Itauma's style after watching a few of his bouts, his amateur bouts, to Muhammad Ali. And that isn't what immediately came to mind when I watched him, but I went back and looked at a couple of his fights again afterwards, and I thought, okay, I see what they're saying. Stylistically, there is some similarities there with Ali. He's obviously a southpaw, and Ali was orthodox. But in terms of the way he moves, the lateral movement, even the way he holds his hands sometimes, the hands low, but also a young Ali would push the knuckle of his glove. Often he had this idiosyncrasy where he pushed the knuckle of one of his gloves into the palm of the other glove. It's one of the idiosyncrasies he had. Deontay Wilder does that quite a bit as well. He pushes the knuckle of his glove into the palm of his other glove. And yeah, Moses Itauma does that quite often in his amateur fights. That's something Ali used to do. So they've got that idiosyncrasy. And as I say, the way Itauma moves, he rolls his upper body. He's very, very fluid, very fast hands, fast feet, very good balance. This is not a guy who moves around and looks clumsy on his feet. This is a guy who moves around and it's seamless. In fact, it's reminiscent of Usyk actually at times, Moses Itauma's movement, when Usyk was an amateur. So that's what I'll say about that. I'll leave it there. I recognize the potential and the talent in Itauma, and I wish him all the best. To reiterate, I'm certainly not saying that he's going to break Mike Tyson's record, but I appreciate the fact that he's trying. And if he does do it, I don't want to hear any excuses from the detractors out there who, let's be real, they're desperate for Itauma not to make it. They're desperate because they want to protect Mike Tyson's record at all costs. I know how fanboys think. That's what they're about. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.